Hello. We want to take this OSCE call from class wax. We'll go on through it, and then some of it has been dealt with in the first OSCE tips. So this one is IPD. I'm sure I spoke about it the other time, so but let me just say it again. The IPD is interpupillary distance. And then to measure it, of course, we did the normal greeting and everything. But the most important things are that you have to do for the distance and the length. To do for the distance, you give the patient a distance target, or maybe a Snelling chart or something, and then you bend down so that you don't block the patient. If you don't bend down, you block the patient. So you bend down, patient will be looking at the Snelling chart, and then you place the ruler to measure the distance between the nasal limbus and temporal limbus, or temporal limbus and nasal limbus, any which one you want to start. You can start temporal limbus on one high, then end with nasal limbus of the other high, or nasal limbus of one high and the temporal limbus of the other high. So that is and for the near IPD, you sit down before if there is chair, you sit down because you have to be on the same level with the patient. You sit down and then you ask the patient to sitting at your nose that please look at my nose so that I'll be convergent. And then you now measure the IPD to same thing from the nasal limbus to the temporal limbus or the temporal limbus to the nasal limbus. You can also use the pupil too, but that one will mean the pen touch. So whichever one is prepared by you, but limbus is usually easier to do compared to the using the pupil, like measuring the distance between the two pupil, using the pen touch. So and then the usual distance, the difference between two should not be than 2 millimeter. If the distance is 7 millimeter, you record it in millimeter. If the distance is 7 millimeter, the near be 55 millimeter. So just 2 to 3 millimeter difference. That's where you know that you are not doing rubbish. Because if you are getting distance at 7 and then near as 50, then that's wrong. Feeling that probably converge too much, you are not giving the correct target or something. Again, distance, snare charts, bend down, so that they don't look at you. And then the near, sit down, let them look at your nose, and then you place your ruler, temporal, nasal limbus, nasal temporal limbus. And then distance is not more than 2 millimeter, 2 to 3 millimeter for the two. So yeah, but the BVD, I think I mentioned that time too. Back for distance is the very common thing, always house. You use your stenopace slits and then you use the trial frame and then each of the high any of the idea has to do I mean the same thing anyway. So and then you put your stenopace slit on the back cell, on the back cell. That's where you put stenopace slits. You put it on the back cell. And then you measure. Usually, me, I prefer putting my mark. While the patient is closing the eye, don't forget about that. While the patient is closing the eye, I prefer putting my mark in front, not uh what's going in front, yes, rather than behind, because there can be error. While you're putting in the behind, you can quickly injure the patient. So you just got to put it in the front, front. That's where you mark it, rather than like trying to be clumsy and then so just mark the front and then you measure your value and you had 2 meter for the thickness of the lid. So yeah, post meter now update with that a lot. So segment height, I think did I okay well. So segment height, you measured that is bifocal, that is bifocal. The bifocal, how to measure segment height is to place you have the patient to wear the glasses comfortably as much as possible, and he has to look straight, give them the look straight the sound bracket, and then you measure the distance between the center of the pupil to the head lower edge of the lens. That's for the bifocal. What for the bifocal is from the limbus, inferior limbus, or the lower lid. Lid is supposed to rest on the inferior limbus. So same thing to the lower edge of the spectacle, and then you record that in CM. So now this question. So these are the new one. Now it's actually a very uh, it's simple question, but just require listening. If a 2-year-old man tap for cataract surgery has the biometry of plus 3 available in theater We have 21, 22, 24. Which one do you want to give and why? And this is very common in our day-to-day activities in theaters. I mean, you don't always get the correct style, especially in children. You don't always get the correct style. So you don't always get it. Sometimes it can be less, can be more. Now, what do you choose? Now, first of all, anytime you do biometry, always remember that whatever you get from the biometry, expected, unless you make mistake when you're doing it, is to make the patient metropic. Is to make the patient metropic. So if you get plus 23 diopter in your biometry, this one that is expected to make patients metropic. That means to make them not have any refractive error. You just replace the correct lens. You remove the lens, phaco, cataract, whichever cataract surgery, you place it on it after, it should not have any refractive error if done properly. Now, so if you now reduce the power or increase the power, it everything changes. If you reduce the power, that means the power of the eye has reduced now. That's not power. That's a power peak. If you increase the power, that means the power of the eye has increased. That's what my So reduce the power in that means less than 23 to 22.9 downwards. So you don't have to 2.9 anyway, but like 22.5, 22, 21.5, 21, blah, 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 like that. That's hyperhope. Because if you reduce the power, you have shifted everything from metro to hyperhope. Bring down hyperhope. And you know what that means for hyperhope? Do you get? And if you increase the power, that patient is now myope. That means you increase more than 23, you're now like 23.5, 24, 25, 26. The patient is now stronger, myope. And so, which one do you not think you prefer? And that's why they always give you the job of that person. This person is a banker that works on laptop or that works on computer or laptop or whichever one you get. That means they do more network. You get. So which one do you think patient would prefer? What patient would prefer my so prefer to increase the power. So because they do more of network, like you do more of network now. So you don't want to need glasses because if you give them this 21, 22, which is apparel, they will need glasses for the network. And so since most of their work is near all the time, so they prefer not to use glasses for that. And so they want something that if you do your cataract surgery, you don't need to use glasses again, and then they'll be able to do their near thing. And so you give them 24 thereafter. Because a banker likely both of the work are usually near work. And so they will prefer to use um to be off glasses while they are working. Unlike maybe someone that's, maybe waiter or something like people that shall do a lot of distance work. Okay, those ones will prefer this so that for their network they will wear glasses. So again, it depends on the occupation. So as anyone can be given, depend on the occupation. And from the question here is banker that do more of network, so I'll be 24 after. If it's someone that do more of distance working, work around trade, people that hop around trade and everything. So you want to give something for the distance tickets. So and then they use classes for their name. So that's why the correct answer will be 24 thereafter because the banker will prefer a nail a banker that works most of the time like near. So that would be better for them. So this other question too. So I think the person that probably write this question made a mistake or something because this can be my impression. So I want to believe it's N15. Because that's also can get on the net charts, cannot be written. Or maybe like that's how they write their own name. I don't know. But it has to be a net vision. Sharing it M15 and 40 cm, what power should require to it M15 and 30 cm? So again, I've done this similar in accommodation. So M15 at 40 cm. So the power needed at that, that means the net point is 40 cm. So the power needed that net point will be equals to 1 divided by 0.4. Because we convert 40 cm to 1 length. So 40 cm to meter will be 40 1 that will be 0.4 meter. So that 1 by 0.4. Now, for some of us that don't like racking our brain, I mean, there are a lot of calculations to be doing. I've given us tips. It's along the course how you can calculate the power without having the or this one divided by whatever you get. So be 2.5 by the way. So what I say you should do is that just the power whatever they give you in centimeter now. mm, Alternatively, just look up the power is equal to 100 divided by 40. If that one is easier for you. So 5 is in centimeter. If it's 50 centimeter, so just use 100 divided by 50. That will be 2. You start set that by 100 divided by 30. That will be 3.3. It's easier to be doing that than doing 1 over 1 over. So 5 is in centimeter. And then you can also convert it back to 40. So you can go back and forth. Meaning that even if you are giving power to, you can do 100 divided by 2.5 and give you 40 same. 100 divided by 3 will give you that 3. Okay, like this 100 to divide it, if it's in centimeter, it's easier like that. And then you're not going for a calculator. Okay, so that means the power is actually using to hit the M15 is 2.5 diopter. Okay, so that means the power needed to hit M15 is 2.5 diopter. So what's our feel now required to hit M15 at that same? So now the net point is now 30 cm. So what power will soon require? Now power needed again for 30 cm. You calculate the power so that the extra power that we require 30 cm will be equal to again 100 divided by 30. Don't be doing one by. Can do that one too. Just convert 30 cm to meter. If you know and then you don't want about 2.33. So 1 over 0.33 meter or 100 divided by 30. Look at so no, this is 0.30. So the power is always inverse of the focal length. That's the meaning. You get no power is always inverse or the net point power or power of anything is always inverse. You get of the net points. So the net point power is always power inverse of the distance. You get in meters. That's how you get that. So they now do 100 by 30 what's it called now? 100 by 30 will be 3.33. So and that got to 3.33 delta. So extra power needed to reach at 30 cm now equal to 3.33 minus what's it called? Minus 2.5. That will equal to 0.83 delta. And that will be part of the needed extra. You get so it has 2.5 already, and then you will need extra. But again, the question is statute too, because if you have to go for that, you're supposed to, you're supposed to keep it on the reserve again. So in continuation, in the recent, really, you're supposed to continue this and say that this 2.5, I mean, that is the power that is needed there, but you have to keep it on the reserve, you know. So you have to keep a third of 2.5 in reserve in the real sense. So if you want to keep a third in reserve, that would be like because you won't give that the power if you can stop here actually because it's straightforward like that. But in the clinical situation, that's the way they can paint it. That's you know that because they will ask you. It's because this question is not complete yet. I want to believe it's not complete yet. If it's full complete question, you have to actually do the reserve because what happens is that you have to keep um some power in reserve. Okay, you can't use everything. But patient will have headaches. I told you in accommodations and everything. So patient will have headaches if you use the if you give the upper without keeping some in reserve. Because it's difficult to measure the certain time when you are rating, so you have to account for the variability. So keep it thought in reserve here. Yeah, if to go further, because question is not complete, but if I'm sure you understand the question I'm talking about, where they say that patient need M5 at so cm, what power we should require more to read, patient not decided to read at so cm, and then what's the power, things like that. So to the reserve, why I think this may not be applicable here, or maybe the question is not complete, is that it's difficult to do a total reserve in the exam to the candidate, but you can also estimate it 2.5 divided by 3. You can see it's 0.8 there about because 0.8 times 2 is 1.6 plus another 0.8 is 2.4. So you can actually approximate to 0.8. No, so it's actually 0.83. You get. So that means true power patient has from that 2.5, not 2.5, because 2.5 minus 0.8, that's like say 1.6. So 1.7 or something. We use 0.83 again because you have to be, you know, technical in the exam. You don't have calculator, so you can just do 0.8 in 2. So because at least that's easier to do to divide, but then you not do 1.7. That's what I do because I don't have calculator. Okay, so it's easier to use 0.8 approximately and then 1.7. Um, that spin. So, and then so what we now need extra will no longer be 0.8 okay, because I have to do the third reserve. So what is truly hard is this you get. So if we keep it third and reserve, very important. So I will now come back here. Now minus 3.3 minus instead of 2.5, now minus from 1.7 ticket. So again, you can use 3.3 here rather than 3.33 just because you are in the exam. And so what will be there is 1.6 extra. That extra. Can you see the way I break it down? I put the clinical situation and then this is calculation. The one I did there was calculation situation, but the clinical sense, you have to keep it together in that. All right, so wait, that makes sense. Next question. Yeah, okay. The next question is the patient. Uh, I get patient rents on the table. As a PC rent, it gets looks like the PC rent. Initially, IOA and then rent is large. You cannot insert PC area. If PC area, what's the power now? This one to talk about is effectivity. All of them are very straightforward applications question. Once you understand optics, you just go it out. And these are the things we do day to day in our set. Again, this surgery that is PCNs. No, it's different from the other one that the area is only available. This one is a PCNs. And then the large is so large that you cannot put the PCRN. Remember this area change is due to make the patient in Ethiopia. Now you want to inside the ACRA, that means you are moving the you are moving you know the higher you get is a plus length. Don't always forget that. It didn't put minus. I mean, the minus ILO, but also didn't put sign. That means this is actually a plus. That's the meaning. So you are moving a plus IL length, interpolar length. Okay. Um, Yeah, moving a plus IL forward. So the effectivity, what will happen to the effectivity? Once you move the plus length forward, the effectivity will increase, right? Yes. So once you move the plus length forward, that's why the upper hope and all. Once the power is not expressed again, or plane as expressed by Europea, we tend to, our fathers, usually bring their cast down, almost down the nose. It's because they want the power to be more. The effectivity will increase, so becomes more powerful. Powerful. Okay. Now, so that means 22 diopter. If you want to move it, because it's in the bag before. Well, this 22 was supposed to be put in the bag. The area you calculated was supposed to be put in the bag. But now there is a rent and it's large. So you now have to move it to anterior chamber. Like, yeah, move it forward. You move it from the back to anterior chamber. In fact, can even move to the support, can move to the iris. There are different value for those ones. You get in the area, the expected value will be changed. So yeah, you're moving into the ACL, to the anterior chamber. And so the effective will now become more powerful. You cannot use that same 22. If you use the same 22, you're going to give patient my because there was that 22 in the back. When you put it in the anterior chamber, it will be like 24. That means patient is now myope. Remember, once you increase the power, is myope. The patient is now indirectly myope, even though it's input 24, but because of the position, the 22 has changed to 24. And that is because of the effectivity of lenses. You get so moving lens area plus area for the effectivity increase, and so it become more powerful. And so you give 20. That's what you give. You give 20 thereafter. Higher and 20. Plus that 20 will be 7 and 22. How did I get 20? For this area generally is minus 2. I know actually there's a table. Okay. Actually table that summarize this. If it's in circles, I think it's minus 4.5 or something. If it's in iris, I think it's minus 1. So that like values you subtract from it. Okay, so 22 in the back, you are going to CIA minus 2. You get so you just minus 2. And so that will not be 20. That will be 22. Like, because we do 22 minus 2. That will not be equal to 20. That's why we put the 20 in the answer chamber. So the 22 in the back will function as 20 in this area. And then there is the slice support. So I think it's minus 0.5. So if you want to put it in the support, I mean, the back is still fair. You want to put it in the support and put 21.5. Which the iris like 21. Look at first, check you see the range where it can be. And if that's how it is until you get to the spectacle. And that's why the spectacle of plus 10 in freaky classes will be serving as the whatever area you calculated. It's because we are moving forward. So effectively keep increasing. Okay, so yeah, so that's how we trying to, but our again is in the watch the video on fertility, you see that. So the cases is I've explained the procedure, and then the marks we get, the entry VA where you determine the access before the power, you find the access, you find the power for every cylinder, This one has been there to track the cases so that and then don't come to same thing. I've explained it. So you always, well, usually it might be usually bring, and then you always pick the slight if the patient said is equal, be as minus 3. So you always bring the less the way they see it more are like minus 2.75 because you don't want to overcorrect them. So you always go lower. So I'm sure this patient is probably equal at minus 3.25. That's why the answer was minus 3. You get, especially for the first time now you can watch the video on that you see it. And then all this, so I'm sure you can do it. You watch the video. Okay, let me just check the spectral equivalent of this will be plus 8. Spectral equivalent is square. Spectral equivalent is equal to square plus half algebraic sum. Algebraic sum that you have to retain the sign. Yeah, let's like to retain the sign all the time. Plus 8 plus minus 3.5 divided by 2. And that equal to plus 8 minus 1.75. And so that will go 6 point what's that now? 25, yes. That's it. So and then the transposition of this from sine axis to sum minus 6 plus minus 1. Again, I always like to um, you know then they change the sign. That'll be plus 1. And then if it's less than or equal to 90, if it's less than or equal to 90, you add 90. Then 90 is started. If it's less than or equal to 90, so you add 90. 90 plus 40 will be what? 130. And so minus 6 minus 1. Now about minus 7. That's okay. Plus 1. 1. That's it. I was 130. So 5 times to that one. We've done this to take in the previous one. Since you're supposed to take for spectacle, occupation, all peace, diabetes, everything has been dealt with in that one. Then fraction. So this one is also similar to what was dealt with, you know, trying to prepare isochronia and everything like that. It's a very common. They like asking it quite a lot. We just be changing the value all the time. I'm asking you why. And to prevent isochronia and then double vision. I did it. It's in the previous OSCE, the first OSCE tips. So again, the vision is always the most important to check first. Which one has a good vision between these two? 6.5 or 6.36? Obviously, right eye has best vision. So you give the right eye. So you will give the best, you give full correction for right eye because this eye is already amplified. So can you see? The reason is that you can't, if it's a child, you can actually give as much as this, but if it's an adult, I mean, difference between these two is more than 250. 2 minus 250 is 5. So depends like 5 after. So patient we have anisocoria, but so they have anisocoria and diplopia. So especially in adults, children, children can feel anything, but anisocoria. So they have all equal image sizes and then eventually they have the option for adult. And so that's why you can't give it two prescriptions. And so what you now do, this is the reason we can't give the prescription above. This is you can give the prescription above and prescription above. So what you now do is that you give the high that has the best vision, you give the full correction. You now say that, because the tolerable, maximum tolerable for adult is 250, as I've said, the difference between the two, party two high, should not go under 250. So just do the minus 250 plus or minus 250. Decade. So that means we do minus 250 plus 250 and then minus 250 minus 250. So minus 250 plus 50 give you plan O. Minus 250 minus 250 will give you minus 5. Which one is closer to the other high? You can see plan O is closer. Minus 5 is still far away. So you know the plan O is better for this one. So for that patient, they give the full vision eventually is right eye minus 250 and then left eye plano. Does that make sense? Because the plano, again, the reason I did just pick the high that has a good vision and plus or minus 250 for me because you know the difference is not more than 250. So either you plus 250 or you minus 250. If you plus 250, you plan no, if you minus 50, you minus 5. You now pick which of these two is closer to the left eye prescription. You now see that the plano is actually closer. So this one will still give some visions. It can be up to maybe 660 or something. Compared to minus 5 is quite far. So you can't give the minus 5, even though the difference is still more than 250. Do you get? But this one will not be a help at all. But this one will still help a bit. Plano is still closer. And so at least I get some visions. Do you get why the on the coil which size will not affect the patient. So that is the idea. So plano, the patient, you give it right terminals to the put and then the left eye plan. So neutralization, this one then with. So now I remember something. I just tried to add it. This one did not come up in this. It's the national exam. So punctuation, the punctuation can be as high as 10. Like they can give you a very thick. In fact, when you see it already, they actually neutralize it and you see, oh, this is a very thick paper. That is the biggest classes. You should take note of that for national exam. The lenses can be very thick. So that means also see it thick, you know that this probably high power. So you have to be very careful because once you put it like this to neutralize, everything will just become so big. Like what's happening here? So you have to be very careful about that. And usually the follow-up question they can ask you is what are the issues with it, with those lenses, the lenses they utilize. That means it's telling that I think they're very high powerful lenses. So you must talk about this cosmesis concern, the issue with cosmesis, covering, wings, photoma, the jack in the boss. If it's a plus lens, the queen cushion. If it's a minus lens, the what barrier distortion. The queen cushion for plus lens, barrier distortion for minus. Okay, so what is high magnifications? So those are the issues with it. And then the last one, I don't know, I think the can ask the issues aside from the for you to get interaction. The last one they never ask, but you can just know it's. I think I discussed it in where did I even discuss it? I can't remember. Maybe in low vision or something, test them bomb. So I just want to remind you again, you have to calculate testable index. You can know is to know the amounts of or to know the power of magnifier to use of magnifier to use in low vision. So testable index, the testable index PI is equal to inverse of visual acuity. The inverse of visual acuity. So it's taking visual acuity of let's say like 660. So, so if EG, if BA is equal to 6/60, testable index equal to 60/6. That equal to 10. So that means magnifier in use is times 10. That's the meaning. So that's the testable index. So if you have any more questions, I'll still have more.